What is going on, everybody? It is your friendly neighborhood Will from Ghosthack here, and today I'm going to talk to you about something important, and it is vocals, right? When you use vocals in a track, most of the time they are pretty much the main focus, right? And then if you want something else to be the main focus, then the vocals will go away and you'll go into that thing. But when you're dealing with the vocals, they're usually the main thing, which means that mixing them and using them in your track is extremely important. What I want to talk to you about today is how to process vocals, but not just for any genre of music. I'm not talking about, say, a vocal track and an acoustic guitar or maybe a piano. Because processing vocals there is pretty simple. What you have to do is you have to make the vocals kind of sound similar to the guitar and the piano and make them fit in together. And guitars, especially acoustic guitars, and pianos are very natural sounding instruments already, so you don't have to do too much with the vocal to make it kind of fit in pretty well. Usually there's compression, maybe a little bit of EQing depending on what mic you're using, and usually some reverb, a bit of delay, again depending on the track, but it doesn't have to get too complicated. But when you're dealing with vocals in electronic music, EDM music, it can be very hard to make the vocal fit the track because obviously the sounds in there are electronic, they're very digital and harsh, they don't sound very natural the way that vocals do. So you have to figure out ways to make the vocals fit in and to remain upfront and strong and to match the rest of the song. And mixing EDM and electronic vocals is what I want to talk to you about today. Now I have a little track right here. It's kind of a future bass vocal track that I made. I believe I made it on a live stream for Ghosthack, but it is featuring a vocal from Ghosthack's Ultimate Acapella collection. You can find that on Ghosthack website. Link is down in the description. So let me just play you this short little track right here, and you can listen to the vocals, and then we'll kind of pick apart the processing, and I'll show you what it would sound like without the processing and with the processing, and go over the techniques that I used. So here we go.
You tell me you're not ready to love again, even though you adore me. So what, you just use me, abuse me. I guess I let my own self down, thinking that you come around. I got better things to do.
So you heard the kind of vocals that were in this track, and you heard how they kind of mix together, especially in the main drop right here, where you have all the other electronic elements coming in. The vocals are still able to remain up front, which is a hard thing to do with vocals, but if you have the proper technique, it can go pretty well. So let me just solo these vocals, and you can see I have a lot of layers. This vocal in the Ultimate Acapella collection comes with harmonies, and it all works out pretty good. But let's just take this spot of the vocal, and you can listen to it, just the vocal.
I guess I let my own self down, thinking that you come around.
And now let me take off the processing for all of these vocals.
I guess I let my own self down, thinking that you come around. I got better things to do.
And you can hear that these vocals are pretty much 100% dry, and they're very well recorded, and the vocalist here is very good. And that's kind of the first step for getting good vocals, is just recording a good vocal take from a good vocalist right at the beginning, which is why I definitely recommend Ghosthack's vocal collections, because we have some pretty good studio vocalists on these. But they're very dry, and they wouldn't mix in with the track very well if we just threw them in there with nothing.
I guess I let my own self down.
It sounds completely separate, like the track has so much energy, whereas the vocals just sound kind of dry and flat, especially in this chorus. Like, you could tell that it could work, it has plenty of potential, but it just doesn't, which is why you need to process them. So to start out, I think I'm just going to take this front bit right here, and we'll go through all the layers that were added.
You tell me you're not ready to
So basically how this starts is I'm going to turn off the vocal bus. I do have all the vocals running through one vocal bus that has just a little bit of EQing and a Maximus here, but I'll get to those in a minute. Basically, we have this going through the main vocal channel. And what I started out doing here was, well, this is just an Edison where I put the vocal, so that doesn't really affect the sound. The first thing is going to be an OTT. Now, I didn't add much here. You can see the depth is midway, but I brought the time all the way up, so you don't have too much hard super compression done with this OTT. And I wanted to use the OTT because the OTT will bring up all like the sizzly high end, and it will kind of flatten out the vocal all around, which is kind of a similar thing to what I'm doing with the rest of the track. It's like, I'm sure there are plenty of instruments here that I added OTT on because it makes them sound very electronic, very flat. It's good for electronic music. So adding a little bit of this to your vocals will automatically let this kind of mix into an electronic track a little bit better. Don't go overboard. It's very easy to go over the top with OTT. That's what it stands for, but you just need to dial it back. Adding a little bit of that can be very helpful. Next up, I have a little bit of EQing because I wanted to take out some of the harsh frequencies. First off, I wanted to roll off this high end because it could get very piercing up at the top when the OTT brings up the super high frequencies, and make sure all the sub and the low end is taking out because you really, really don't want that interfering with the sub frequencies of your electronic music. And taking out anywhere between 150 and 80 is probably good. This is at 144. It's usually a little higher than I'd go. I tend to go around 100, but there weren't really any frequencies under there.
You tell me you're not ready to.
I think there may have been a couple parts where she went about as low as that, but just look at where the fundamental is. And if there are no frequencies lower than that, you can just cut off everything. And there's also some harsh frequencies in here that I decided to take down that were kind of brought out by the OTT. And this is a very good idea to do, especially in electronic tracks, because a lot of the instruments used in electronic music have frequencies in these areas, and you really, really don't want that to get too piercing. It's very easy to go overboard in those areas, and it just makes it kind of hard to listen to in your ears. So make sure those are controlled and you'll be all good. After that, I threw Serum FX on here, and basically there's a few things I'm doing here. The first thing is going to be basic reverb and delay, which is pretty simple. It's pretty understandable.
You tell me you're not ready to.
It's just a filtered kind of ping pong delay on 1/4 on each side right there. It's very understandable. And then a reverb, general hall reverb. Don't go too big with your reverb, right? It can be very easy to drown out these vocals. And this is a significant amount of reverb, but I would say it is a very good idea to at least add some amount of reverb to your vocals to give them a little bit of room. In the majority of electronic music, you know, a lot of sounds have a good amount of reverb, especially if it's the kind of electronic music that features vocals. So adding a little bit of this is, at least for me, a must.
You tell me you're not ready to.
The next thing I did, or at least before I did those, is actually add a little bit of chorus, which just sounds like this.
You tell me you're not ready to.
So it's very spread out. It's kind of watery sounding, sort of wishy-washy, just in this stereo spectrum. And I thought it added a very nice effect. And just adding a little bit of this stereo, just mix it into about here.
You tell me you're not ready to.
It can make the vocals sound just a little bit less dry and a little more kind of liquid, just kind of flowing through the track, which again matches up with a lot of the other EDM elements that have at least a little bit of stereo width. So stuff like that is generally pretty good. I also have stereo width coming in the reverb and, you know, the other harmonies, so that works out pretty well. But there's something important here that I want to go over. And I will say this is optional. You don't have to do this. This is just something that I hear in a lot of electronic music and indie music, actually, is adding distortion to your vocals, right? I have soft clip distortion here. The drive is all the way up. If I were to turn the mix all the way up, this is what it would sound like.
You tell me you're not ready to.
It's definitely distorting. So it's not clipping. This isn't the same as, like, it's not digital or like analog clipping like through the master chain that will actually add the little cracks and pops. This is just soft clipping. This is soft saturation that we're doing on purpose. And the reason I do this is because saturation and distortion in general kind of multiplies the harmonics throughout the spectrum and can kind of fill out something and make it sound a little more powerful if used the right way, if you don't go overboard with it. So I wanted to try to mix this in to give the vocals some more just digital textures, you know what I'm saying? Make it sound a little warmer and a little more powerful to mix in with the other very digital and powerful sounds in this electronic track.
You tell me you're not ready to love again, even though you
can kind of hear when I add that distortion how it gets a little more powerful, and doing that mixes very well with electronic music in my experience. It's generally a good thing to do, but again, that's optional. Just depends on how clean or dirty you want your vocals to be. And that's what I did with Serum FX. And lastly, what I did was just add a little bit of Soundgoodizer. Man, it's just a little bit. Like, this is almost doesn't do anything.
You tell me you're not ready to.
Yeah, well, that does make it a little bit louder, makes it a little more powerful. Basically, what this is multi-band compression as well. It kind of brings up the compression of the high end and, you know, the deeper low end, and kind of flattens everything out. I think it also adds a little bit of stereo spectrum, but basically, there's just a little more power coming off of this plugin. And then we can get over to this part where we have some harmonies coming in.
I guess I let my own self down.
And you can see I have a separate track for these harmonies.
I guess I let my own self down.
But they're all running into the vocals bus. And like I said, on the vocals bus is this EQ that's taking out any weird low end. And it's also taking out around, I have it right here, around 13 to 1400. I just thought it was a little piercing in that area, and I wanted to take all the vocals, including the harmonies, down in that one spot. And then in the Maximus, what I'm doing on this bus is essentially, we can take a look. Yeah, I'm controlling the mid frequencies. But you'll see right here that these are not actually the mids. These are a lot more the highs. I adjusted all this so the mid frequencies were in this specific region. And what I'm doing here is called De-Essing, right? And I'm doing very subtle De-Essing. Basically, I'm not doing anything with the high frequency band right here or the very large low frequency band. It's just this band right here. Because these are where some of kind of the piercing frequencies are the harmonics that are like, that are right in your ear and can be a little harsh if you crank it too loud. And I added just a little bit of compression to make sure the S's and the T's are not like just stabbing your ears at that one moment. It's a very good thing to do, especially if you have very high frequency vocals, that you can kind of control those S's and the T's, the really harsh transients right there. And there are plugins designed purely for de-essing, right? This is just a manual version of this where I kind of soloed this region by adjusting these two band knobs, right? And I just narrowed in on this region and added a little bit of compression, and then like nothing's happening on the master. That keeps it from getting too harsh. But if you look on this this chain, I know they both say main vocal, but that's just because I transferred the chain from 20 right to 21 because I wanted the chain for the harmony to be pretty dang similar. I actually turned off the OTT because I thought the harmony was a little bit strong for this. I wanted the harmony to still be background, so taking away that multi-band compression helped a little bit with that. This is exactly the same EQ as the first one. And then in Serum FX, I added a little bit more chorus and I added a little bit more distortion, right? So we're just kind of bringing up the effects of this vocal because I don't want this vocal to be the upfront, the main one. I want this to be a backing vocal. So you can kind of bring up these effects that I was talking about before. This is why this one sounds a little more distorted than the other one. And it doesn't sound as upfront because I have this chorus going right here. So that's a good way to kind of separate your harmonies from your main vocals and kind of make sure that the main vocal is the one that is up front the most while still hearing the harmony in the background. They're not fighting for attention. They're working together.
I guess I let my own self down, thinking that you come around.
And next up, I did very similar stuff for this chorus / drop, whatever you want to call it, but I did a couple of different things. I added this harmony right here. because it was included in the package, and it's just going through the harmony effect chain that I just went over right now. But I did another thing right here, which I also hear a lot in electronic music. This is a very common thing to do, and it's this. Basically, I just took the main chorus vocals right here.
Oh, you turned your back and let me fall.
And I bounced that particular part out without the effects, because this is running right into 20, the same as the main vocal. And I turned this guy down. You see it's not as high volume as the other one, so it layers together, and I turned it up an octave, of course. That's what I've done here, is I've pitched it up an octave, so they layer together like this.
Back and let me fall. I rise above it all.
And that just adds that extra element of digital power and harmony to the whole thing. It also makes it sound almost like a synthesizer. Like it mixes in with the synths that I have going here extremely well. And of course, this harmony comes in right here along with the other harmony, and we get these vocals.
Oh, you turned your back and let me fall. I rise above it all, staying strong and slow.
And just to kind of display this difference, I'm once again going to turn off the effects so you can hear just the vocals themselves. And then I'm going to take off this little extra vocal layer.
Oh, you turned your back and let me fall. I rise above it all.
That's a big difference that you hear right there. That's a very, very big difference from the affected one. And now we can listen to the whole track with the effects on, so you can kind of listen for the different things that we add, and you can hear how all of these elements stack up in the end.
You tell me you're not ready to love again, even though you adore me. So what, you just use me, abuse me. I guess I let my own self down, thinking that you come around. I got better things to do. You won't page me, feeling blue, not over you. Oh, you turned your back and let me fall. I rise above it all, staying strong and slow.
Now, I will say that the things that I've added to my vocals right here are the majority of the things that I add to any vocals that I do with EDM. But keep in mind that a lot of it will be specific on the track you're working on. These processes may not work exactly the same for every track. Maybe you'll have to do some more stuff. Maybe you won't have to do as much stuff to get your vocals to mix with the track well. In the end, it does all depend on the track that you're working on. These are just my tips and tricks and kind of my go-to effects when I'm adding vocals into electronic music, because it can definitely be tricky, and having at least kind of a game plan going into affecting the vocals is generally a good idea. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it was at least a little bit helpful. If you have particular things that you like to add to your vocals, let us know down in the comment section below. It could be very helpful to us or maybe some other producers that are down there right now. Also, if you are looking for good vocals to use in your production, Ghosthack has a lot of different vocal packs. You can find the link to our website down in the description below, and you can give those a listen. You can check those out because they have some really nice singers. I really like going through and listening to our vocal packs. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Happy producing.